So I'm thrilled to be here. So this is a topic that I just love. I'm passionate about. I think it's a great foundational aspect, the skill that we all need to know before we dive into all of our respective climate action stuff. So this session is on how to communicate climate change effectively with conservatives, progressives, people of color, and youth. And so unfortunately, there's no one size fits all on how you communicate on climate change. It very much depends on who you are, who you're talking to, what your audience is. For example, Jonathan Haidt in his book, The Righteous Mind, many of you have met, he says if you bring to a sort of a climate change denier all kinds of science and facts that may work really well, they're more likely to have the skill set to argue their way out and even get further entrenched in their denial position. So it really is important that you know how to target. So that's what our session is today, about how to target your communication. Speaking of communication, I want to mention a little story. About 4 years ago, I was in one of our Saturday climate meetings, and we all went around the room and we said something we're doing about climate change. Someone's going to read a book on something. Someone's going to go do a tabling event. And one of our colleagues, Karen Myers, who's not one prone to big grandiose statements, she made this sort of powerful statement. She said, CCL has really changed my life. It's changed the way I communicate with everybody on everything. And this is a person who, reads, Dark Money and The Sixth Extinction and all these really intense books that gets everyone fired up and emotional. And so it was really powerful and impactful for me to hear someone like that really understand and appreciate the CCL methodology on how we communicate and how we target. So with that, I'm really thrilled. We've got 4 excellent panelists here, and they're going to go through and they're going to give you a little background on a little bit on who they are, some of the challenges with that particular pillar, and then also some tips. And then we're going to go to a Q&A. So put your active listening mind in gear, and so we'll have a fun discussion here. So first we're going to hear from a little bit from Sam Horowitz. He's a sophomore at Pitzer College, majoring in environmental analysis with a policy focus, and very active in climate change and ready to share all kinds of great insights on engaging the youth. So thank you, Sam. Next we're going to have Jose Castaneda. Jose is a candidate for the Fullerton City Council 2018 and an organizer for OC for Climate Action, and also roles as a fellow and a commissioner in Los Angeles. So that's Jose. And then next we're going to have Farah Khan. Farah Khan also running for city council in Irvine. And so Farah is very involved in a lot of progressive causes. I follow her, I see her on Facebook, and I swear there's more than one Farah Khan, because there's a digital twin out there somewhere. So she is a small business owner for 13 years, very active in the city level, so all kinds of interesting insights on how to channel all the energy from the city all the way to our federal level, and works on a lot of green energy and zero waste efforts. And then Larry Kramer. So Larry is a member of the CCL Conservative Caucus, and Larry has been a city council and also mayor for San Juan Capistrano. And Larry in his About Me slide has some other cool tidbits, so I will save that for Larry and all the others. But first, I want to give one round of applause for all the panelists for coming up here to talk to us today. So with that, I'll turn it over to Sam. Take it away, Sam.
Hi, everyone. So, like Bruce mentioned, I'm a sophomore at Pitzer College. Currently, I work with the Roberts Environmental Center, which is a environmental research institute on campus, and with Put a Price on It, which is a carbon pricing advocacy campaign, which is led by young people. I'm also one of the lead organizers in the Democrats of the Claremont Colleges, and I am an elected member of Pitzer College's Judicial Council. I'm also the secretary and treasurer for Cahootech, which organizes Pitzer's annual Music and Arts Festival. Before going on, I should say that my environmental journey really began in 2012. That's when Hurricane Sandy hit. So I'm from New York originally, and that was really the first time that I saw the impacts of climate change firsthand. Before then, it was something that was really theoretical and academic, something you only saw projections about. But when the hurricane hit, it made it real for a lot of New Yorkers. So some challenges with communicating with young people. One that I find is just physically getting people together. Students have a lot of responsibilities. We have homework, clubs, classes. So it's really hard to find one place and one time that works for everyone. And I find that when that does happen, a lot more gets done, it happens more quickly, and connections are made between people. But that is a really difficult thing to get done. Then accountability is a big one, because a lot of what we're doing with young people is not something that is a job where you get paid or a class where you're working for a grade. So there's not really always that incentive to doing your work. So because you're not trying to get an A, you're trying to get those $11 an hour, it can be hard to get people to take on work and then complete that work. And then finally, inclusivity. The environmental movement is something that has been dominated by white guys for a really long time. So it's really important, but also challenging to make sure that environmental spaces, causes that you're advocating for, are welcome to everyone. And that is a challenge that we do face. So some tips on communicating with young people. One of the biggest ones that I found is making connections with other interests. So a lot of young people are intensely passionate about things other than the environment. So on my campus, for example, a lot of students devote their time and activism to issues like racial injustice, gender issues, and workers' rights. And so while many people might not think to connect those issues to environmentalism, there are certainly ways where they intersect. For example, how Black people are disproportionately in areas that have toxic dumping sites. So if you show people who are interested in those areas the connections between that and environmentalism, you can get them passionate about something that they didn't really think affected their area at all. Social media might be an obvious one. It's a really great way to connect with people, to spread information, to get people to come out to events. But social media, you should really come with an asterisk. Too often, I'll see people making posts that are really long and unwieldy, or oversaturating people. So for me, the best way to use social media is having a post that is a few lines, that's grabby, and then not oversaturating people. So posting it once or twice in the relevant groups. Al Gore does a great job of this. For example, his posts are never longer than a few sentences. He'll often include a link to an article that expands on what he's saying. And sometimes, like you see here, he'll include a catchy image that illustrates his point. And then finally, localizing issues. This is really important on college campuses where you have people from across the country and across the world even. So people are not necessarily going to be as passionate about California-based issues, for example. So I find that it's really important to get them involved in issues that affect where they're from. So whether that be climate change or other environmental issues. So I find that when you do that, when you do get them involved in environmental issues that are going on in their hometowns, it's a good bet to get them energized about those issues, accountable about their work, and then perhaps interested in recruiting other people from that same area to their cause as well. Thank you.
So, hello everyone. Before I begin, I'd first like to acknowledge that we are on Tongva land. And with that, it's really important to acknowledge whose land we are a guest on. And again, my name is Jose Trinidad Castañeda. I have dedicated my life to fighting for justice, especially climate and environmental justice. So I'm really excited to be here fighting alongside you all. And a little bit about me, I'm an organizer, I'm an activist, and I'm now a candidate for Fullerton City Council District 5 on November 6, 2018. Yeah, so if you're in Fullerton, talk to me. I see you, Elizabeth. A little bit about why we're here. We're here at Cal State LA because I was invited to get involved and actually help plan for where the regional conference would be. And as a student, as an anthropology student here at Cal State LA, I thought there's no better place than my own campus. And so I'm really excited that you're here enjoying our facilities and our food. At the same time, when I was a student, I was also serving as the Environmental Policy Commissioner. So I was trying to get started here, making some changes to our green building codes, actually bringing some green spaces and talking about community gardens here in the dorms. And so I really feel that for young people, especially if they have the opportunity to go to a university, it all starts with right there where they're at on their campus. Now I serve as the Parks and Recreation Commissioner for the City of Fullerton, and I'm continuing to take those same values there to that commission, making sure that my community's voices are heard, that we get more renovations and revitalizations to our parks, and we start talking about the need for urban forests and the need for more, just more amenities at our parks for seniors and children to enjoy. And so, some exciting news. The work continues. And last night I was appointed to the South Coast Air Quality Management District Young Leaders Advisory Council. So we'll be working on regional issues, tackling air pollution and traffic reduction. And, the list continues to go. So one of the things that I really have a lot of concern about is our food security moving forward into the future. With climate change, we're going to see devastating impacts to our agricultural systems. And if you've noticed here, your lunch was primarily plant-based. And so I've started a small LLC, a small business called Chinampa Farms, where I am working on getting the latest technological advances to a scalable production level of food production, right? So if you've ever heard of hydroponics, if you ever heard of aquaponics, there are people all across Southern California working on it, and I'm one of them. So make sure you start paying attention to see how you can localize your food production as well, because that's one of the pathways towards sustainability. And again, I'm on other civic engagement organizations such as the New Leaders Council, an alum from New American Leaders. And so I can go on, but I'm going to continue to the next slide. And when we're talking about communicating with people of color, I want to just underscore that for us as people of color, climate change is more about environmental justice and decolonization. We come from and we're descended from peoples that have felt and experienced the brunt of these environmental degradation and environmental impacts for centuries. And so grounding ourselves in the historical context of where we come from is very important. And if you're a person of color, if you're coming from a different continent than right here in the North and South America and Africa as well, then you do have a role to play in terms of raising consciousness and acknowledging whose land that we're on. And so when I started, I said that we're here on Tongva land. And if you're from Southern Orange County, you're on Hashman land. And the reason why it's important to mention this is because indigenous peoples were the first conservationists. They have been protecting the environment. They're fighting against these oil pipelines like the Dakota Access Pipeline and Standing Rock. And so this work is not new to us. And it's just really important that, whether you're a person of color communicating with other people of color or a non-person of color communicating with people of color, you're talking with people and acknowledging who was here first. And so again, for all of us, especially as people of color, when we're situating ourselves in our local political climate and we're doing research on who is on our local city councils, what decisions have they've been making, we have to make sure that we're at the table. And if we're not at the table, we've been at the menu. And you can see the effects of that with the, environmental racism, with the effects of redlining, with the battles over at Exide battery plant, and even in Orange County with our water supplies. And I won't get too into details, but it's really important that we start thinking about the connections between civic engagement and the environmental activism that we do, because it's not enough anymore. We're gonna have to start talking about how do we change the makeup and representatives of our local boards, of positions of power, because as we can see now with the lack of representation, not just with a tokenizing diversity quota tactic, right, to get more people of color on positions of power, but actually people from the communities who have their ears on the ground, who have been at the front lines, getting them on the diocese, getting them on school boards, so that way we can start talking, we can tackle the local issues that most directly affect us. Yeah. And so I want to end with the civic power of our words. How many of you have ever been asked this question? Will you run for office? Raise your hand. So, okay, I see a few people. I see a few candidates, Laura Oatman in the back running for Congress as well. The really big issue with this statement is the fact that we don't have a culture of civic engagement. We don't have a culture where we normalize getting young people, getting just active people, progressives, environmentalists, women especially, to think about running for office. Maybe not in the immediate election that they're up against, but at the same time, planning their lives to make sure we're positioned to make greater impacts at a systemic and structural level. And one of the things that I've done as a student here was take all the climate data, look at the timelines for when specific events are going to happen, as in when we're going to have soil collapse from the lack of phosphorus and nitrogen in our agricultural lands, and actually plot how old will I be? What is going to be my age when certain things are set to kick in according to the data? And that's really what helped me shape kind of why I'm running for office, not just to represent the young people that are going to be most devastated and impacted by the lack of action on climate, but as well as my own life, right? I hope to live to be 100. I hope to live to see the end of the century, to see that we can actually pull through and get out of this together, stronger together. So thank you very much.
Right. Hi, everyone.
Hello.
My name is Farah Khan, and a little bit about myself. Graduate of UC Davis, and was very involved in Greenpeace at the time. This is around 1995, 1996. When I started working, I worked with a biotech company in regulatory affairs, so kind of got a feel for what's required and what actually happens in a company. And sometimes the two don't go hand in hand. And so you become the bad guy and say, well, you know what, you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. And it seems that even though I'm not in that business anymore, that has continued on, because now at a civic level, it's the same thing. It's like, you guys aren't doing what you're supposed to be doing. So I'm excited to be here today because I feel that this is such a prime time for us, seeing this room full of people that are engaged in making sure that our elected officials know what's important and what's going to sustain us for the future generations to come is really, if we do it now and we do it right, we're going to be in better shape if we don't do anything at all. And so many times, I know I'm going to be speaking on behalf of the Progressive Voice. Many times we feel that, going outside someone's office and protesting makes us feel good. It makes us feel like we're voicing our concerns. But sometimes we have to take a step back and see the broader ideas and make sure that we are dialoguing with people and making sure that what we are bringing to the table might not be where we want to be at, but it's enough to get things moving forward. So, and I think a lot of that I learned from my kids. I have two kids that are 16 and 13, and I have two foster kids that are 11 and 12. And, you don't always get your way as a parent, so you have to compromise. They are my teachers right now, so. But I'm going to move right in into communicating with progressives. So it might seem easy, like, you gather a group of people that are like-minded, and you're just going to share with them the information that you have, and you're going to be educating the masses. It doesn't really happen that way, because sometimes, even in progressive circles, you'll have people that have their passion issues. So it might be water for one person. It might be, trash for another person. It might be solar energy for one person, and that's their passion issue. And when you come at them with something like, and I'll use a particular experience, I was working on an issue locally with the electrical substation that SCE was trying to put in the middle of a business complex, and saying that, Irvine needed more energy, and so we needed to build this horrific electrical substation. So I went to them and I was like, well, have you guys thought about putting in alternative energy sources so we don't have an electrical substation 10 feet from another building? And so, that back and forth sort of deal, and I was trying to get a lot of people to join this momentum. Like, we need to speak up on this because it's happening in one neighborhood today, it could happen in yours the next day. And really the setback was, well, I'm working on this project right now, and I'm working on this project right now. I don't even know what an electrical substation is. And so it's really about telling that story that makes people get involved. So the next time that I had that group together, they were like, oh, are you going to talk about the electrical substation again? I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm not going to talk about the substation. I'm going to talk about this guy I met, the building owner that's in that business complex. And when his employees, which were majority women, found out that this electrical substation was coming in, they started resigning from that company, saying they didn't want to work there because they didn't feel safe. They were reading up on what electrical substations do to the environment and to us as human beings, and they weren't comfortable about it. And because they were leaving, he was unable to hire people and replace them in a timely basis, so his business was falling down. And he was worried about how he was going to sustain his business. And his neighbor, who bought the building as a retirement income, was having a hard time finding tenants that would come in. So he had this building with no tenants. And so now he's retired, but he's not making any income. And all of a sudden they were like, oh, well, this is affecting people. I'm like, yes, it is. And sometimes you just have to set yourself back and tell them the real life stories of what's actually happening. And that's when people all of a sudden got quiet. I mean, you guys got really quiet. It's nice. But really, that's how you kind of reel people in. And it's like, it's not about just this substation. I know this is the main issue that we're talking about, but it's about people's lives. And those people are not progressive. They could be progressive, they could be conservative, they could be from anywhere, any walk of life. But do we value human life? And are we willing to fight for it? And if we are, then we need to take action today. And after that, we were able to get over 900 signatures on our petition. And we were able to bring SCE and the Irvine Company to the table to find an alternate location because they were not ready to look into alternative energy. So we didn't get exactly what we wanted, but we at least got them away from the people that they were affecting most. And sometimes, like I'm sharing this story with you, sometimes we need results. We like to see results happen right away. And it's not always the case. For this substation issue, it took almost a little over a year and 2 months from the time we found out this was going in to the time they said, okay, let's come to the table and let's talk about alternate sites. And so, when you're constantly reaching out to people and saying, hey, this is still going on, we still need your support, they're like, isn't it over yet? I thought I signed the petition. Isn't it done? And I'm like, no, the petition doesn't solve the problem. That's just the first step. The petition goes out to our city council members. It went out to SCE heads. It went out to the Irvine Company heads to let them know that people were getting involved. And so, again, when we're educating folks, we have to be able to give them that timeline. And I loved Trini's idea of, making sure you know exactly when things are going to be affecting you directly and knowing that timeline. That goes for just about any project. If you have a timeline in front of you and you're able to share that, I think it gives people a perspective of what to expect. So that when you come back to them saying, we need to do this next step now, they're like, oh, I thought it was all over. Like, no, it's a step-by-step process and it takes time. And if we don't put that effort in continuously, we're not going to get to where we need to be. So, tips. So right now in California, we have the cap and trade program, right? We're supposed to be reducing our emissions to the 1990 level by 2020. We're in 2018, right? And then there was an addition to that where our goal is to reduce our emissions by 40% of what 1990 was by 2030. So I'm sitting here going like, okay, if we haven't even reached the 2020 goals, how are we adding on more goals and adding 10 more years? How's that going to happen, right? And, they could say that this is a bipartisan supported bill and we're going to make this happen, but how is it being implemented at the local level? It's not. And I'll tell you why. Because I went with this exact bill to our mayor and I said, hey, you know what, did you know that this is in place and we have to do this much work to get to this level by 2020? And his answer was like, well, yeah, who's going to make me do it? Right? Who's going to make him do it? and it comes down to us. We're going to make him do it.
Yeah.
And right? But what I'd like to see happen is that I know on the national level there's the carbon fee and dividend policy going on, and when you look at it, when you're putting a fee on carbon emissions and fuel and giving the dividends to people, it kind of makes sense economically, right? And there's a lot of bipartisan support for it. And it's something that's implemented, and that's how it works. It's actually implemented. So somehow, if we can connect what's happening, what you guys are lobbying at the national level to what's happening locally, maybe we can find a place where we meet. Maybe we can get the carbon fee and dividend policy in our cities. Maybe we can get that in our counties, in our state. And what I'm really interested in figuring out is, how do we get something that works to go nationwide? And so we don't have this conflict of we're doing something nationwide, cities are doing something else, and the state is doing something totally different. Because we're all fighting for the same goal, but because we're doing different directions, we're not going to be able to get there. Because we all are taking our efforts into one area, someone's taking it into another area. But if we all combined our efforts, can you imagine the possibility? So my ask from all of you is, give me something I can take to my city council in my county and push for this and make this happen, to make it a reality. Because I think if you're working at the national level and you've got people on the ground working on the city and county levels, we're going to get this done. And we will make a difference. Thank you so much.
It's already up. Before I start, just a lesson learned. I have a bandage across my nose. Do not walk with your cell phone into a wall. Okay, for those of you young people, it applies to you also. Okay. Anyways, I wasn't born a conservative, but I probably became one very early in life. It's amazing how things way back then do affect you and stay with you for a long time. My father was a tool maker, always worked in a non-union shop in Michigan. I had an uncle who was a Democrat, believed in unions, worked for a company called Packard. Anybody ever hear of Packard Motor Company? A few of you do, okay? They went on strike because they were sure that Packard had a pile of money. He never went back to work for Packard or any other motor company. So as a young person, I said, okay, Republicans, always work. Democrats, he's out of work. So I became a conservative. That's it, okay? When I went to college, I went on a Navy scholarship, and I worked all my semesters there, and that's how I ended up in the submarine force. I really don't believe in free lunches. I don't believe in debt. So how did I end up in CCL? Mark Tabbert. But I was ready to join CCL when I met Mark. My own senses tell me that the climate's changing. Scientists tell me it's changing. And as a submariner, when I started out, you couldn't go up to the North Pole without some very special equipment. Now we go up there all the time. The Arctic is melting, despite what anybody says, and it's accelerating. Yes, in fact, climate change is real. When I came here 16 years ago, I didn't need air conditioning. I now need air conditioning, and I need it more and more every year. So yeah, the climate's changing. So yes, and I want to do my part, and I want to be part of CCL. Okay? Did I hit this?
Spacebar.
Which one? That one.
Try one of the arrows on the right.
On the right? No? You have to show me.
Click on the screen. There we go.
Ah, there we go. Thank you. we're dependent upon youth for an awful lot of things. My grandsons were up here, they could have helped me with that today. That's great. So, when you do go to the gas pump, you know that there are taxes on the fuel already and regulations drive it up even more. However, carbon's in everything, and that's only one small aspect of it. We need carbon to pay its full price, not just at the gas pump, okay? Now, conservatives can hide behind the president, what he says, but even Scott Pruitt now admits that things are getting warmer, but now he says, well, warming is good. He says that without a shred of any evidence, and if you look at the evidence, he's completely wrong. But at least he seems to now say that, yes, the climate is changing. So that's a step, right? Now we need to have him take another much larger step, okay? In terms of cap and trade, we all see how, I don't know, you've all had experience where the government taxes you for one thing and then uses the money somewhere else. And that's sort of what happens with cap and trade. That's why people are a little bit afraid of any of these additional taxes. I mean, right now, some of the cap and trade money I think is using to build houses in LA or apartments, which some people may like, but is that really helping us? Don't think so. Anyways, so that's the beauty of carbon fee and dividend. It's transparent. You take the money out, put the money out. That's the beauty of it, and it's also the danger of it from a politician's standpoint because they don't have control of it. So that's why you got to convince the politicians that they want to do the right thing for the right thing and not so that they can dole out the money to their special projects. Okay? Good. So what can you do to attract and keep more conservatives like myself? Well, nothing will scare a conservative off at a meeting more than if you start talking liberal politics. Okay? I'm in San Juan Capistrano. I have a number of people in our chapter who are Republicans and who are conservatives, and I have to remind my members at the beginning of each meeting that we are nonpartisan. If you want to talk politics, that's fine. Go outside and talk politics. Inside, we're nonpartisan. We need everybody, okay? It's not conservatives versus liberals. It's us, it's all of us against carbon, okay? Peer pressure is a very powerful force. Emphasizing the Climate Solutions Caucus and the Climate Leadership Council are powerful tools. Whenever I talk conservatives, I talk about those. I'd like to have the pictures of all of the different Congress people to show them that and point out that their congressman's on there. It really helps an awful lot. I was at the California Republican Convention a while back, and at the CCL booth, when I would walk up to a Republican, I wouldn't say I was a member of CCL, I would say, I'm a member of the Conservative Caucus of CCL. Okay. And then I talked about how we have a solution and it will create more jobs. They loved the word jobs. That was great. Okay. And it was amazing. I think we ran about a 90% rate of people who were willing to listen to us and talk, and I hope we converted a few of them to what we wanted. Craig Preston gave a presentation to a fairly conservative group of people down in Mission Viejo the other day, the Kiwanis. Thank you, Craig. And he did something really smart. Well, he gave a great presentation. At the end of it, he didn't say anything about, do you believe in climate change or not? He said, what effects have you seen of climate change in your life? And he wrote them on the board. And a lot of them were written up there. There were a few people in the audience who I think were not really climate change people. Not one of them spoke up because they already saw on the board that their friends, their peers, saw the effects of climate change already. And it was a very powerful thing to do. Thank you, Craig. I'll use that every time I do it. And in preparing for this, I belong to a Rotary Club in San Juan Capistrano, quite conservative. So I decided that I would talk to some of my conservative Republicans about why they didn't believe in climate change. it was very disappointing. They all believed in climate change. They were all doing something about it. They had changed their air conditioning in their house to a better air conditioning system that used less power. They had gone to LED lights. They had put solar on. The lesson I've learned is if you want to talk to Republicans or conservatives, don't do it in a peer group. You do it on a one-on-one basis, and you'll find out that most of them are really with us already. But peer pressure is so strong, you need to break it apart. So that worked out extremely well. What else can I really say? This whole carbon fee and dividend should apply or should be embraced by conservatives even more than liberals, because it doesn't create more government. It gets the job done. It's very simple. It's very transparent. It doesn't end up with a lot of do-gooder projects. We don't have to have do-gooder projects if this all works. It's just nice and simple. Republicans, conservatives should love it, and we need to push that aspect. I believe that carbon fee and dividend are the catalyst for change, and that free enterprise in this great country is the solution. Thank you very much.
Oh, fantastic. So no shortage of passion there. I love it. So fantastic. Okay, so now we have time for a few questions. So why don't we go to there? And we have 2 microphones too as well. Thank you, Rosemary, and thank you, Dana. So question for our panelists.
Yes, Farah, you asked about what a city can do or a county, state can do. You can push the city council and the mayor to endorse the carbon fee and dividend and send that to their member of Congress. That's what you can do.
Thank you.
Great. Okay. Next question. Come on, you CCLers. I know you people. You've got it inside you. Go for it. Yes, over here.
The Hawkins drawdown that you have, Larry.
This switch. This one.
Okay. I'm sorry, I should have mentioned that. Drawdown is a book written by Hawkins. It lists who you talk to anywhere between 75 and 100 different things. 75. Different one. It lists between 75 and 100 things that can be done to reduce our carbon footprint. And it's just amazing everything that you can do. The top item on there surprised me, and actually the top 4 or 5 surprised me. You've all read it, so you know the answer. The air conditioning is the answer. If we can, and that's where free enterprise, I think, will have a big effect, because you can take air conditioning systems and make them much more efficient. That reduces the amount of energy you need and therefore helps reduce carbon in the atmosphere. It's a great book. I recommend it very strongly. Thank you.
I think they might have it in the back corner too. Bookstore. Sold out. Okay, Craig's holding the book. You want to see what it looks
Farah,
like. Was our speaker from a few months ago.
Farah,
So, next, is there a question? Yes, go ahead.
you mentioned local action, and the most local is me and you. And if we put a carbon tax on ourselves, then we're acting locally and consistently with our commitments. That would mean if you go to Nature Conservancy or NRDC, they have carbon offsets. If you fly 1,000 miles, you donate $6, and you're zero at that point. That's about as local as you can get.
Cool, nice point. Question over here, Dana. Can you bring the microphone over here? Right here.
This question is for Larry, and I really appreciate what you said about meeting individually with conservatives rather than in group settings, since there's a lot of peer pressure. But in, for instance, like working with, if you wanted to get a Chamber of Commerce endorsement, I'm not quite, how would you strategically sort of approach that?
This is working now? Yeah. I am a member of the Chamber of Commerce of San Juan. By the way, one of the things that I recommend for all of you is join all the organizations you possibly can in your town. And it's interesting how you can mix and match and get opportunities to talk. For Chamber of Commerce, my approach is to talk to individual members of the Chamber of Commerce. Remember, they're all individual business owners in town, and get a consensus there amongst all of them. Get their endorsements, okay? And then once you have enough of those endorsements, then get the entire chamber to do it. I'm doing the same thing with the San Juan Capistrano City Council right now. I have a couple members now who say that they'll endorse what we're doing. In fact, I'm going to speak to them next Tuesday and give them a proposal and see what happens. But yeah, work on individual people in the Chamber of Commerce.
Okay, last question.
Okay, this is for Sam and perhaps for Jose, but given lots of young people are students and students have high turnover, what sort of actions can you get students to take within their 2 to 4 year span locally, and how can you get students to be really engaged within just a short time period in a specific location that they will soon be leaving?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think a really good way to get students involved is just have them join clubs on campus. Like every campus has environmental clubs and they do lots of different things that you can get involved with. But another way is students, even if they're not necessarily constituents of where their college is, they can still lobby the local elected officials there. So they'll still listen to you, they'll still meet with you, and that's still a really good way to get involved in something that will probably last longer than your time in college. Do you want to speak?
Yeah, sure. So the very first day I stepped foot onto Cal State LA, I had an internal conversation with myself, and I told myself that I would not graduate until I made an impact on this campus, until I changed something about this university for the next generations of students that would come following me. And so that kind of intention, I'm not really sure how you could get that to be part of an organization's intention without explicitly stating it, without getting everybody in that organization on the very first day to say that's what their goal is as well, that they won't leave that organization until they have changed something that they really passionately care about. And so I've taken that across all the different issues that I've been working on here. And so during the course of my academic career here at Cal State LA, I organized with multiple organizations and coalitions to actually get gender neutral, all gender restrooms across the campus here, and additional changes as well. So having that strong intention be part of your organization's opening and closing might change the culture enough that every student individual can actually meditate on that and make that part of their life's journey as well.
Fantastic. All right, so we need to wrap it up, and I want to have us all thank our panelists. Thank you very much.
Good job. Good luck on your election. Thank you.